Hello, I'm Grant Walker from the staff of the United States Naval Academy Museum. This pristine ship model next to me represents an English 70-gun ship from about the year 1703. We believe the model itself was completed prior to 1707. We think the flags on it were also made in 1707 or maybe 1708, specifically to decorate this ship model. The flags represent what are known as launching flags. In Britain's Royal Navy, in the age of sail, when the hulls of new and rebuilt ships were completed, they were launched stern first down an inclined slipway into a holding pond or a harbor, and only afterward were they given their masts and rigging. Now then as now, the launching of a warship was oftentimes a major public event, drawing thousands of spectators to the water's edge. To add to the festivities, workers in the dockyard would fit the newly completed hull, still perched at the top of their slipways, with a set of enormous, colorful flags, launching flags, flown from tall, thin flagstaffs. They were always numbered 5, and they were always in the same order, whether it's the 1600s or the 1800s. At the bow, the first flag was the Union Jack. Directly abaft that, in the position of the foremast, went the Admiralty Flag, this red flag with an anchor surrounded by a cable. In the position of the mainmast, they flew the Royal Standard, which bore the arms of England's ruling monarch. In the position of the third of the 3 masts, the mizzenmast, they flew the Union Flag, which is just like the Union Jack, only larger. And then rounding out the set at the stern, they flew a red ensign. Now, in the world today, there are somewhat more than 400 surviving English dockyard models. We have evidence of only about a dozen of these, a little more than a dozen, that were once fitted with a full set of launching flags. However, over time, quite a few of these have gone missing, so that today you can almost literally count the number of models with their complete array of 5 launching flags on one hand. That is, until 2009. When, right here at the Naval Academy Museum, we discovered a cache of 13 of these incredibly rare model launching flags. They comprised 3 sets, one complete set of 5 flags for one model, and 2 other sets of 4 flags each, so they were both missing 1 flag. Then 7 years later, in 2016, we discovered those 2 flags also in our reserve collection. They must have come here in 1938, as part of the collection of ship models bequeathed to the Naval Academy by Colonel Henry H. Rogers. But they were overlooked from then all the way until 2008 and 9, when the building that houses the museum, Preble Hall, underwent a major renovation. Most of the launching flags on models in other collections are made of cloth or cardstock, but all 15 of our models are metal. The ones on this model were made from thin sheets of brass, whereas the other 2 sets were both made of tin. The ones on this model had suffered the most damage, so we turned these over to a conservator with instructions to clean and preserve one side of the flags as is, but to fully conserve the other side of the flag, filling in all the areas of paint loss. In due course, we'll have the other 2 sets of tin flags also conserved and reunited with the models they were made to adorn some 3 centuries ago. So, we invite you to come to the Naval Academy Museum to see and admire these rare and colorful relics from the great age of sail.
Hello, my name is Joe Lomax. I'm from the United States Naval Academy Chemistry Department. I've been working with the USNA Museum on some launching flags. We have an image of one here from the Royal Standard of the William III's Britannia that was made in the year 1700 during major repairs of that ship. And we've used the technique X-ray fluorescence to investigate the parts of this flag. We used the Brooker M4 Tornado instrument over here, which is X-ray fluorescence. Now, X-ray fluorescence works on the principle that an X-ray will kick an electron out from the center of an atom, and then an electron from farther out will fall into the place where that electron was, and it will just be influenced by the charge on the nucleus of the particular type of atom. So it's exquisitely specific to a particular element in the analysis. And so this is the overview of the flag, the launching flag, and we'll be walking through the different elements and thereby figuring out the different types of pigments that were used in painting this. We start with Mercury, and you can see wherever there was red in the painting, there is Mercury. In the lions here, the backgrounds of the lions there. And if this were the pigment vermilion, a mercury sulfide mineral, we would expect sulfur in the same places. And here we go. Yes, we do. In the same places where we saw mercury, we see sulfur, nailing this down, this red pigment down as vermilion. This is cobalt. We see cobalt wherever there was blue. And we might think that cobalt-containing glass, smalt, which is ground up cobalt-containing glass, might be the source of this one. So in the same way, we would expect silicon from the glass to be in the same place as the cobalt. And in fact, we see that. Here is where the blue was. That's where we found the cobalt and the silicon, definitively giving this as the mineral pigment smalt. Now here we have iron. Iron is in all the gold highlights, whether it be of the lions, the fleur-de-lis, or the harp over here. So we would expect this to be an iron oxide, perhaps ochre, that is giving us our golden colors for the highlights. Lead, however, is seen over much of the painting. We expect that lead is the base undercoat of it as a basic lead white, but we have extra lines of lead where we had the lions and the harp here, so we expect that that was used as just a plain white as a painting part as well. We see gaps along here of the lead. That's where there are losses. And if we look at the tin, we see bright spots of tin there. We see tin pretty much all over because seen through the other samples, it sees a bit of tin. Not so great, but we see a bit of tin. But it's quite bright on there, which gives us an indication that this substrate, this under the metal itself that it was painted on, was tin. And so I'd like to thank you for looking at our analysis, taking some time with our analysis here, as we at the chemistry department do our part to assist the people at the USNA Museum in looking at historical artifacts. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to present painting's conservator, Katja Gibson.
Right, when I got the flags into my care, the main concern was conservation of the severe flaking that was present. And thinking about the process of restoration and conservation of these flags, we decided to use some old traditional materials that would be consistent with the age of the painting, of the flag paintings. So for conservation purposes, I used some microcrystalline wax that I applied with a thin brush, and on both sides of the paintings, and then I run the paintings on a vacuum hot table under controlled heat and vacuum, just to get the pressure and the temperature, very controlled, so I could stabilize the paint layer. After that process, the paintings were left to cool off completely. They rested for about a day, and then I removed the excess wax, which is very easy to do with mineral spirits. Mineral spirits are inert. They don't really affect the original paint. No flaking, no flakes came off, and after that the paintings, the flags were ready for in-painting. At that time I did get the results from the spectral analysis that was done here, and it was very clear what pigments were used, which was a confirmation of the knowledge that I had about the history of the pigments, that the most severe flaking in the paintings were in blue pigments. And we were wondering why that was, because the reds were very stable, whites were quite stable, but the blues were not. And it turned out that the pigments most likely used was azurite, and probably low-grade azurite, since these flags were not painted by the high-end painters. So probably low-grade azurite that was mixed in with malachite, and over time, as it oxidized, it acquired the greenish hue. So nowadays, when you look at this, the one side of the paintings or the flags that were not restored, you can clearly see that the remnants are not blue anymore, but more like very dark green, almost grayish green. So I mixed the pigments accordingly with the modern version of the same pigments, with some raw umber mixed in for added effects, and a little bit of Indian yellow to get the greenish hue as well. And the red turned out to be vermilion or cinnabar, and that was very stable pigment, and that's easily accessible as well today. So I use that in the restoration process. And we decided to leave one side unrestored, so you can have a reference to the originality of the piece, but the port side has been fully restored, and the effort was made not to make the restoration look brand new. So all the color matching and then the varnishing was done to mimic the age, so it's consistent with the model and with the remnants of the pigment that was still on the flags. So. And then the last thing what I did was varnish them. I did varnish them with the traditional Damar varnish, which is Old Masters varnish. It's very good, it's resilient, and it will serve its purpose here, and I think it worked great.